spirit of reconciliation, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island peoples today. Welcome to Totally Lit, the podcast celebrating reading, writing, and creating literature. I'm your host, Ky Garvey. Thank you for listening. I have the very talented Louisa Duval joining me this episode, along with her alter-writing ego, Sabrina Duval. Louisa is a debut Australian author who writes rural romance set in the fictional country town of Ballydoon. Here the heroes are rugged as the landscape around them, and the story is steamier than an Aussie heatwave. Under her pen name Sabrina Duval, she writes reimagined fairy tales and witchy mysteries with a happily ever after. Louisa has worked in radio, recruitment, education, freelance writing, and corporate communications. Once she even traipsed around a national park looking for wombat burrows. When she isn't working in the city, she spends as much time as possible with her family at their riverside acreage, watching the wallabies and drinking the local wine. She is a proud supporter of her local rural fire brigade and hopes to never be in the front line of a bushfire and admires those who have. She lives with her husband, 2 kids, and a lazy cattle dog, Kelpie Cross, 3 chickens, and many outdoor plants. I hope you enjoy our chat. Louisa Duval, welcome to Totally Lit, or should I call you Sabrina?
I am both, one and the same. Yes, Sabrina and Louise are coming to you live on Totally Lit. And it's wonderful to actually do this with you.
Yes,
I've often
it's
seen
exciting.
you in analog for real life, and here we are using the internet and we're now recording. We got to make this happen, so I'm very, very excited.
Yes.
It's great.
If you message me when I'm in a moment of weakness, it's really easy to get on the podcast.
I am proof. This is a moment. I am her moment of weakness.
But yeah, if I've got a really busy week and I get a request, I'm like, I don't know if I can make that happen till maybe 3 months' time.
I want to say thank you
So
so much for fitting us in because when I saw, I think you threw that out there and I thought, oh yeah, I'll talk to
jump
her
on
about
it.
2020,
Do it
25.
now.
Next minute, here we are. And this worked out really well. So
I'm
let's rock
very
and roll.
excited. I feel very spoilt to be able to chat to a friend
Yeah,
on
ditto.
although
Ditto.
I after you've been a guest on Totally Lit, you're a Totally Lit friend of the podcast for life. So I'm not sure if all my guests feel that way about me, but I feel that way about them. Like, oh, they're like my little family now. So
I like
welcome,
it.
Louisa,
Thank you.
Sabrina, which raises my first question about writing with a pen name, because I immediately was like, oh, should I be keeping your name a secret, or do your readers know that you use different names? And honestly, there are people, if you meet me at a writing event and you say, hey, Kai, and I don't answer, that's because my real name is actually Kylie. And sometimes I'm like, oh, that's me. So tell me about Sabrina Duval, your alter ego.
Sabrina's my newest iteration, the butterfly that emerged from a cocoon of thought. I really love witchy romance as a
Mm.
reader and have always been quite curious about what would I sound like with my voice? What would my stories be if I wrote that? And an opportunity came up to muck around and experiment with a short story last year, which I did actually under as Louisa Duval because I thought, oh, that's fine. It was a short run anthology and it won't exist anymore in the internet space. It was done and dusted in 6 months. Actually, we may have extended it to about 8, but it doesn't matter. It was a short run. But it was in doing that I thought I really love this. I really love these characters, and they're coming back for more. And there's a series, and it's a bit of a huge debate. So Louisa Duval, she writes romance, and it's more small town or rural romance, set in Australia. So when we say rural romance, it's always Aussie, and it's about primarily at the moment rural firefighters. It's a bit of a love letter to all our rural fire brigades at the moment, especially with the eve of summer. And I particularly love that role in country communities that you can be all be rural firefighters, but you're
Yes.
all just all these very different day jobs and all facets of the community, all different backgrounds. And I thought that's how I want to talk about what country town life is like through that lens of a brigade.
I love
And but
that.
then Sabrina really want to talk about witches and mystery and were raccoons and other ridiculous types of things. And
Were raccoons?
and where werewolves were like werepugs or were golden retrievers. And I thought, I suddenly realized my epiphany was Sabrina wants to have that humor and tone of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer
Hmm.
in those old days. And I thought, well, what if those sort of Buffy characters were actually in their mid to late 30s? There's no
Okay.
high school, but they're dealing with high school reunions instead, and they're adults and they're running businesses now. But yeah, there are werepugs and there are were raccoons and other mystery and mayhem with the magic, but with
Now,
a little sprinkling of crime as well. And
oh,
that was the birth
awesome.
of Sabrina. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, even though this is an audio format, I'm just wanting to mention that I'm a little bit distracted by a head behind you, Louisa. Who have
Which
you
way are
got?
we? Is it over my
Got a
shoulder?
little somebody with glasses and spiky hair?
All right, I've got to confess, there's a whole vase of heads.
Oh,
And there's
vase of
some
heads.
people listening to this going, oh Lord, she's still got them. So if you're listening,
The heads are
Joanne
famous.
Spears, it's Joe Spears from South
Ah,
Australia.
hello, Joanne.
Sharon Swanepoel, she's on a plane right now
Sharon.
to Darwin. Have a great holiday, Sharon. She's in the anthology as well. Fiona M. Marsden, award-winning writer from Stanthorpe,
Oh my
and
goodness.
I've got two Sharons, but who doesn't? And also Dakota Harrison, who also writes most recently under as Angelica Grimm. But I found myself over at Romance Writers of New Zealand, their conference in August,
Hmm.
and I was asked to pick up by at least three of the people that I'm holding. Hey, I'm up for an award. Could you go get something for me? And so I created
Oh.
Face on a Stick, and Sharon moved to Melbourne and Victoria. Well, she's out of Melbourne now. She moved to Victoria from Queensland.
Hmm.
So, but she's now with me and she turns up to things. It's like, oh, look,
Oh,
Sharon's here. So Sharon's on a stick. So it's
I
Face on a
love it.
Stick. So, yeah, so while you're listening to audio,
So
think
what
a
is the
paddle pop stick.
criteria to make it into your bowl of the baskets?
I think I've just got a problem with decluttering, as in I
Mm.
don't, and I'm just collecting heads on a stick. Actually, that's very witchy. I like that. That's going to go in a novel one day.
Add it in a book. There you go.
That's right. That's what we do.
Sorry, listeners, I'm gone off on a tangent. Um, so Louisa, now that you've got your pen name as well as your writing name,
Yes.
um, do you think that you will develop more pen names if you try out different genres?
Now, if you'd asked me that like over a year ago, I would have said, "Oh, I'm not going to write witchy romance," but here I am. So I'm going to say yes, but I have no idea what that might be.
Mm,
And I think too, it's been really interesting in me debating about it. I talked to publishers that I've been pitching to about, do you recommend establishing clear brands? So with my pen names, I see them as a clear reader promise or an
mm,
expectation of what they're going to get. And yet there's been quite a few traditionally published authors who have written like rom-coms, contemporary like rom-coms, and that have just dived into paranormal and witchy romance too. And
mm.
because 'tis the season, we're on the eve of spooky season with October.
Yes.
And there's some fantastic titles coming out from people I had not expected. Something about dating a werewolf.
Mm,
So I've got my little TBR pile as soon as October hits and their new releases are here.
yep.
Can't wait. It's going to be great. But
Very exciting.
they write across lots of genres within romance.
Mm,
But for me, it was really important. Now, I want Sabrina to have her own brand.
yep.
And so when I turn up to different events where it might be both of us, Louisa and Sabrina are there representing. But there's a few things I'm going to be doing in the next year and also 2026, actually, where I'll be either both or one. And
Hmm.
it's a far clearer reader promise when I turn up
Yep.
about who you're going to get and what it's all about. Yeah.
Mm, mm.
So in the end, that's what made me do it. Does that mean that, yes, I have different social media accounts for Sabrina and Louisa? Yes, Louisa probably
Oh,
talks more about Sabrina than Sabrina does. So there's this administrivia, right, that goes with it behind
yeah.
the scenes. And
I
that's
think I would
probably a
find that
big con.
challenging.
Yeah, I find that quite dull and it does feel hard behind the scenes, I'll admit
Mm,
that. But I'm also really glad each each of them exist. It's been great.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
And to speak like the business of writing for just a brief moment, to divert away from the anthologies and the pen names. It's been great too there's a big, huge rebrand that I've been doing. So it's school
mm,
holiday time up here while we're recording and we're coming up to the end of that. And I've just been going through going, what have I said on that page of my website? What do I want it to look like? What is the refresh? What does it all look like? And it feels really good knowing Sabrina's got her clear messaging. It feels
Mm.
great. Louisa's had a little bit of a facelift. It's looking a lot fresher with some of the imagery that I've now got. And just how much a brand has evolved.
Yeah.
So looking at what actually has still remained the same, but how I've actually changed with my
Mm.
writing and what's now come out and what needs to be added. And that actually felt really good. So it feels quite, for writers, I think, what do you mean you got to write about yourself? What do you mean I got to write website copy and it's got to sound a bit salesy, a little bit snappy? But I found that actually behind the scenes with all this to be a really good process. It's like,
Mm.
yeah,
Mm.
this is what you've done. And look how far you've come in the years when this first went live. And that feels really good. So
I have to
that's will
admit,
come.
I'm not very good at my own branding in that because I've got all my social media accounts connected. So when I post on my personal account, it then slides across to the Totally Lit page and then to my Instagram and things like that because it's easier. But
Yes.
my
Yep.
real personality bleeds out, which probably doesn't necessarily always fit with my brand as a picture book author. Although probably
Yep.
sits better with the podcasting, because I just have a quite a dark sense of humor at times and a quirky outlook to life. And every now and then I'm like, oh, okay, that's probably a bit too dark. Or people have got an insight to the real me. Maybe they'll unfriend or unlike. I do believe in authenticity though, so I do like the idea that people
Yes.
know who I really am and what I
Yeah, I'm
believe in and things like
yep.
that. So,
And I think there's still, I think in reader and author lands, so like those, let's say there's, there's a game or two. I think both sides of that argument, both sides of that camp believe in. I still think there's a lot of readers and a lot of writers who think if you have a pen name, it's somehow disingenuous or not authentic, like you're hiding
mm,
something. And that's why I just turn around and say, no, it's actually a brand. And some of us just don't have for real life names that actually roll off the tongue well, that sound
mm.
good with an audio narrator, just even saying your name. Or, yeah, or for whatever reason, they're just. Oh, actually, because Louisa's also a pen name too for me, because I already had established a very specific type of professional brand with my real life name. Funnily enough, we all do inadvertently with our working lives. You've got
I
some
always
sort of
call you
professional
Louisa.
status.
Am I calling you the right name now?
Yeah, oh, that's fine because you know me as Louisa. And my real name is Louise or Lou. So thank God I chose a pen
I
name
was
that
having
I'll
like a
actually
little
pay
mini
attention to.
crisis then. I'm like, I've known
Nah,
you for so long. Am I calling you the wrong name?
no, no, no. And now I actually answer to Louisa. It's really quite funny. But yeah, most people either just call me Lou or Louisa, which is really good. But I was very deliberate with that and thought I have to have
Mm,
a starter pack to actually answer, like what you're saying. I have to be able to answer it. If I called
mm.
myself, I'm just, I need a name. Suzanne, I'm plucking that out of the ether. I would honestly just sit there going, I wonder why that person keeps asking for Suzanne because Suzanne's not responding. And it'd be like
Oh,
Suzanne
that's
Duval just
me.
sitting there going, shit, is that's me? So it had to be something like that. But I
One
also
thing I,
had, yeah, yeah,
one
you
thing
go.
that has been interesting to me is once I changed to Ky Garvey, people
Yeah,
who've known me as Kylie now call me Ky. Like I have morphed into what I've created. And I find that
yeah,
really interesting that you can have a bit of control over
yes.
who you are. I'm
Yeah,
just like, oh,
absolutely.
okay, I can break free from the past a little bit. Now we're probably delving into my psyche a bit. But
We get you on the
yeah,
couch to
look at
have the chat
me.
now.
I'm the butterfly that is, or the phoenix, you know. I'm like, oh, that part of my world is then, this is now, and everybody's just jumped on board and come along for the
Yeah.
ride.
And look, one of the things that I used to do pre-pandemic was work in journalism.
Mm,
So radio was my particular brand of journalism. I remember when I started to tell some radio colleagues and mentors, yeah, I'm going to start publishing. I'm really happy with this manuscript I've got. I'm going to start and what I was doing and what the series was about. And they were all really surprised that I wasn't going to leverage off my established name because a lot
mm,
of people in very specific circles knew who I was. And it's like, leverage off that brand. And I thought, actually, it was very important to me not. not to
Mm.
confuse the brands, and to be able to hold day jobs too,
Yeah.
where yeah, it wasn't confused with, oh, you write witchy romance or you write like Ruro and all that sort of thing, because people have been quite odd when you describe yourself as a romance writer.
Mm.
And you realize they have preconceived ideas of what an immense genre is
Yep.
and what's within it. And it's often not from a position of they're a reader of it either, because they're often
Mm.
not readers at all. So
No,
I
but it's
thought,
very like
yeah,
pigeonholed, cliched kind of ideas of what a romance writer
unfortunately,
is.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But when you meet those avid readers who absolutely understand the genre, actually, it sounds very academic when I say understand. They just read it and they love it. And
Mm.
it's like, yep, it's like I'm talking to my people now. But I also just don't want to dilute other professional roles that I've got other than
Yeah.
writer.
Mm.
So yeah, it was actually just really good to, looking back, it was the best decision I made to clearly demark that. Even though when you worked in media, a lot of media people looking at me going, they'd use your existing platforms that you've already got and leverage that and all these sort of words. And I'm like, no, I don't actually like the smushing of everything, because when you start to bleed all the colors into one,
Mm.
you often end up with a dirty brown or a dirty gray. Like
Yeah.
there's no clarity there, and it's you spend all that time going, yeah, I do a bit of this and I do a bit of that, and it's like this is not the conversation I want to have. I just want to talk to you about this thing over here where I'm in this role.
Mm.
So yeah, for me, it's not so much split personalities. You sometimes hear that with pen names, which is really weird. But it's more that no, I've got clearly demarked brands,
Mm.
and I know what Louisa does. I think I've even found myself. This is actually the weird and funny thing. So get me on the couch with this little insight. But I've started to see I will use different language when I'm Sabrina as
Mm.
opposed to if I'm Louisa, and I have to make a conscious choice. Like so today, the day that we are this evening that we are recording during the day preceding this, I actually had a write-in catch-up. And most people know me at that as Louisa, but there were more than half who knew I was doing a new pen name.
Mm.
So it's funny because they see me as Louisa with the new pen name Sabrina. And talking about I had to talk about the anthology, did a little bit of behind the scenes biz stuff with everybody. We're all getting ready for our like Halloween and October launch parties. But yeah, and then other people who came along know me definitely as Louisa Ruro, small town contemporary sort of romance author. So I found myself thinking, oh, I actually use a different language when I'm Louisa versus Sabrina,
Mm.
talking about different things. And I thought this is really interesting that I really have embraced. It's almost like a role, putting it on like a uniform.
Yep.
So the
Mm.
language of having different jobs have different languages, or different professions do. And I thought I did not see that a pen name would have its own sort of professional language, but it definitely does. And I'm
Mm.
subtly different between the two. And I think I'm the only one who notices it. But
It's
yeah,
what Beyonce does. She turns into Sasha Fierce before she goes on stage because she puts
of
on that
course she does.
persona. So there you go.
Me
You're
and
the
me and Beyonce.
Beyonce of pen names.
Hashtag that later. I can't wait to slide into some of my writing girlies DMs with that.
Ah,
Just the Beyonce of pen names here.
yeah, there you
How can I
go.
help you?
We've created a hashtag. On just the last thing I'll say about pen names is, and I don't think you have this problem, but I'm actually really introverted and find it really difficult to be out in the world. I'm like, oh, I want to throw this piece of work out, but then I want to hide away and not hear about it. Not like it is nice to have someone say, oh, that's a great piece of writing, but I'm like, I never want to see it or hear it again.
Yeah, no, I have,
So
I
for
find
me,
myself very similar.
having
Yes.
having a pen name was so freeing when I was first like, okay,
Yes.
you've got to put yourself out there, you've got to try these things. And creating Ky Garvey and submitting work felt like a little bit of a barrier of protection for me as well. And especially with some of the stuff, like some of my short stories are very personal. And I'm
Yep.
like, oh, I'm letting someone see the inner part of me that not everyone sees very often. That's actually a really intimate, engaging experience if you think about that relationship between writer and reader. And these are my
Yes.
innermost feelings, and I'm now making you feel that way as well. I found it at first really cringy and difficult. So creating Ky Garvey made it much easier for me to be able to send that out into the world and not feel like I was like laying myself bare to be critiqued and destroyed. And although that's not what
Yes.
happens at all anyway, once you write something and it's good, people are kind to you and they tell you that they enjoyed it. So I don't know why I thought that it would be so terrible, but it was a tool for me to be able to sort of do my writing, put things out, then the podcast, and like it's just grown from there. So I can sort of use it as a little bit of a pathway out into the world without feeling like I have to run and hide every time I do something.
Yeah.
Um,
Ditto. Yep. I
yep. You
understand.
do feel the
Holly.
same.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think every writer feels that way. It's like,
Mm.
here's my work. Now don't look at me,
Yes.
shun the
Yep.
light kind of thing. But gaining that, even if it's faking it, that confidence or a certain sense of calmness, a stillness, where it's like, yes, I've put something out. And there's going to be feedback. It's going to be good, bad, and there's some ugly stuff out there in the world, right? Where people will fling mud at the most beautiful of things that have been created.
Mm.
And being able to remain calm and still, and it's like, yeah, I acknowledge you, but you're not part of who I am.
Yep.
That's wholly intact, and you cannot touch that.
Mm.
And whether we have to do it through a pen name or not, but I think it's easier to, speaking for myself, and like I certainly, um, I just wholly understand, empathize with what you're describing, that
Mm.
experience. So yeah, yeah, ditto. Too long didn't read, ditto.
Now, you've been working on some exciting projects this year,
Yeah,
anthologies. Can
it's
you
been a
tell
big
me?
year.
Because it's not just submitting a story to an anthology, it's the whole kit and caboodle creation from idea right through to publication, launch, and
Yes.
sale. Do you want to walk us through the whole process and share these projects with everybody so they can buy them as well?
Absolutely. So Sabrina's going to do you a pitch, dear listeners. The Love Experts was an anthology we created at our romance writing conference. So it was something where there was a regular group, a larger group of us that were always getting together, and we thought, yeah, we're going to do a Halloween
Mm.
anthology. But because we were at a conference, we all sort of looked at each other and thought, well, what if witches were always having an annual conference? And what would you call it? And Coven Fest was born. And we thought we'd already done an anthology, a lot of us who were in this one, the Love Experts, we were in one the year before.
Hmm.
And we thought, let's go back to that town, we'll add a witchy layer. So
Okay.
we all found ourselves, some of us actually found ourselves back at this particular Christmas tree farm that we were all running around on last year. We went to the small town in particular that we were adjacent to with the Christmas tree farm, where the most of the conference was. And all of a sudden, we started looking at our romance writing conference, going, "What would witches have? What's the witchy equivalent of pitching? What's the, to publishers? What's the witchy equivalent of a keynote speaker or demonstrations and workshops? Like, would you go to a potion making workshop to hear from the latest?" Or flipping around, like you turning up to Coven Fest with a bit of a problem you can't solve and you want to get access to the world's experts, that kind of thing. And we have tornadoes and really bad weather threatening this town. Like we threw everything at this town and there was a witch who was going to solve it. We had original Brothers Grimm manuscripts there on display,
Oh my
magically
goodness.
protected. Yeah, we thought, look, anything goes. Because when you add that magic layer, it's like, yeah,
Mm.
we all had to discuss as a group what was our, were there any limits to our magic systems? What wasn't in our world? And in the end, we decided we did have fae, we did have shifters, werewolves. Actually, we both represented those.
Hmm.
We have vampires. So anything who was a magic user, a spellcaster
Right.
of any kind, was welcome. And that actually became a bit of the invitation, the welcome to Coven Fest. Who was invited? Monsters are, of course, welcome. It ends in the Monster Mash Ball on Halloween as well. And a lot of the action that's in the anthology happens all around that. And in the end, as
Mm.
our stories were evolving, we realized we had a lovely chronology of start to finish. So it was sort of like the prep and the
Mm.
yeah, there were pre-conference events. That's how this anthology kicks off with my story and a Frog Prince hex that went horribly wrong with the normie next door. And the normies don't know there's witches either, but that normie certainly did with his predicament. And it leads right into some of the events and it ends with Monster Mash Ball stories as well. So I just want to do a shout out as well to Louisa West over in Western Australia. She was an absolute gun with our cover. It's absolutely stunning. She did all the original drawings and then the cover design and put it all together for us. So thank you, Louisa. You absolute queen. And she is a bit of a legend with witchy and paranormal women's stories as well. She's just had some new releases. But also, because I love signing up for several projects at once, haha, um, I'm holding this up for you, Ky, which is lost on you, dear reader, but I'm going to describe it to you. So the Love Experts, we had 11 authors do Halloween, and I'm just holding up the 12 tropes of Christmas. So,
Which I thought was a very thin anthology, but it turns out it's a postcard.
and I've got it because it's my books are coming any day now next week. I think Tuesday I'm going to get mine, and we go live next week. At the time that we recorded this, but at the time you listen, we will be out there on the internets, your listening ear holes. But the 12 tropes, this couldn't be more different to each other. So I was the coordinator, the publisher of the Love Hexperts. And I got contacted by Anna, who put the 12 tropes of Christmas all together. She coordinated this from scratch, saying, hey, I've got a spot left. I've had an author who couldn't stay in the group. Would you be keen? And I was at a real crossroads and thought, oh my God, I'm doing my own little Christmas anthology, and that'll be coming out in November. But I thought, can I squeeze another story in? Because I knew what my schedule was. I knew what I've got on. New job this year, all sorts of things was going on. And I thought, who's going to be in it? And it's just an amazing group of women here in Australia, all Australian authors who are involved with the 12 Tropes of Christmas. And I thought that's an honour to have my name with them. And I thought, yeah, I want to be in. And this was all rom-com stories. So we were looking at it as you may have thought, the title gave it away, the 12 Tropes of Christmas. And I feel kind of fraudulent from a point of view of talking about this anthology, but I'm sort of doing it from the outside looking in as the last woman who got in before the door closed.
Well
A
done.
little bit like Indiana Jones. I scrambled under the door and grabbed my hat before it slammed down. But like when you're looking at it, like, okay, what's everybody done? And loving how everybody went through and chose. We've all chosen a trope that we've done under the banner of Christmas romance. And to my utter delight, no one had done Grumpy Sunshine, because that is my absolute one click. It's my crack. I adore that dynamic. And I didn't even know what I was writing.
Mm.
But as soon as I saw that wasn't taken, I think it was the first day I'm even in the group after I've said yes. And I just jumped on that and went, Grumpy Sunshine. I know I'm writing towards the grump before Christmas and I have no idea what it's about, but I've got a title and I know what my trope is. And yeah, working through with that. What was I going to do? And as a little side note, it was an absolute delight to be at Maya Linnell. She writes wonderful Ruro titles for Alan and Unwin, and her latest Wallaby Lane came out this week that we're recording. And of all the things in talking with her that came up, it was about Owner Builder and how they'd done a poured brick structure. I haven't said that quite right, but and I said, oh, I've just got so many Owner Builder magazines at home, and I'm decluttering at the moment here at home, finding ancient Owner Builder magazines, like 24 years old, 15 years old, and also questioning, oh yeah, but is it still too soon? I really quite like all these magazines. And I really
Don't
love
do it. You'll be on an episode of Hoarders.
and it'll all be just Owner Builder magazine, probably copies. But I just that became something that Dad and I would always talk about, Owner Builder magazines. And I had this moment coming away from Maya's book launch where we talked about this, and I thought, oh, no surprises. I've got a builder who is helping. She's a massage therapist in my Grumpy Sunshine, who's just bought a lovely property. It's very scenic, but it's also got a little bit of a reputation. Everyone knows it as the Stone House because the hippies in the 70s built an octagonal stone house out of river stone. It's got naked lady murals in some of the rooms, and she's trying to make it into not quite, exclusivity type of luxury type of, but she really wants to create a special, not necessarily 1970s naked lady mural type of place where people can just come and they feel pampered and it feels wonderful. And it's actually based on a real octagonal Riverstone hippie built
Really?
house, and it's up the road from me. And it was
I'm
owner
excited.
built.
Now I need to see that.
Oh, it's an incredible home. There's no naked lady murals. I'm sorry, I'll have to that's poetic license where I thought if there's the hippies still ran it. And I've called a swimming hole in that story. It's a real place, the hippie hole, because everyone knew it as the place where the hippie commune would
Mm-hmm.
go for skinny dips. And I thought, yeah, I love it. I love this idea of someone who's not handy ending up with this owner-built home that everyone knows about in the district. And you can say the stone house. You don't need GPS because you know exactly where the stone house is. It's that kind of place. Like saying going to the shops, you can go to the stone house. And he is a carpenter. He's a qualified builder. And he's kind of horrified at the living condition she's in this owner-built studio cabin because she's not in the stone house that's going to be the business. And she's kind of dossing slash camping, mulching into this old studio cabin that really needs a little bit of TLC. And without giving any more away, I just realized I drew upon 24 years of reading these owner builder
Mm.
magazines with utter and sheer delight every month when there was a new one. Look at the floor plans and yeah, talking about for my dad, going, oh, wouldn't have put a wall there, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And how sitting there sketching it up because he'd love to design livable sheds, homes. He loved all the old 70s make your own furniture kind of stuff. So in all of these weird and strange ways, I'm still even having conversations about that sort of the owner builder type of community,
Mm. Mm.
even just in the last week, and then realized, you wrote a whole story about that whole phenomenon, love. So yeah, to see
It's
when this
amazing
comes
where
out,
ideas come from.
yeah, and I think it was always just bubbling away there. And it was great to even share it with somebody else in a completely different context. And I thought,
Mm.
yeah, even when I'm decluttering, even when I'm at other book launches, there's these lovely things that have really resonated with me. So for something where I've came in and gone, "'Twas the grunt before Christmas," with I don't know what I'm going to write. There was something that really lovely and natural about the hero that just bubbled to the surface, but
Mm.
also the heroine just dealing with how the heck do you try and solve all these architectural problems and getting it passed by council. And oh my God, am I going to have a business launch? I just want to offer massages
Mm.
and a day spa type of experience. And yeah, if I smush two of these characters together, what would happen? And that's what, well, if you want
You
to
have
know
to
what
read it to
happens,
find
you
out.
have to read it. That's right. So I just want to do a shout out to the wonderful Anna Foxkirk for putting the 12 tropes of Christmas together. It's really lovely. As I wave my little postcard at you, my dear Ky.
And where can we order it when it's available?
This one is in the Amazon universe, so it's on Kindle Unlimited, or you can actually buy it as an ebook if you're not in Kindle Unlimited, and paperbacks too are coming as well. So each of the authors will have paperbacks, but if you can't get onto any of the authors in particular, you can just order it from your copy from Amazon, which is lovely.
Fantastic.
And I'll be taking some copies along to some book signings coming up
Mm.
around Christmas. Yeah.
Now, you were sharing prior to our interview about some spooky book signings that you've got coming up. Do you want to
Yes.
tell me? I love the paranormal and
Oh,
mysteries,
it's
so
just
I'm totally
amazing.
in now. You've got me hooked.
Like witchy romance, it all started for me with getting out to Glengallen homestead. So if you're not a Queenslander, if you're not a Southeast Queenslander, a lot of people go, "What's a Glengallen?" And homestead sounds old. And yes, you're right, it is. It's Queensland old is how I'm going to frame it. So it was started to be built 1870, 1872, and it's a sandstone double story homestead. It fell into utter disrepair. It looked like the sort of thing you'd just lean on and it would have fallen over in the actually for a lot of from the 1930s to the 1990s, and then they started to restore it. And I interviewed the woman who is the president of their trust, who looks after the whole site, and it's Donna Fraser. And we just got talking about, because I always knew about the display that they had, that there was a mummified cat that they found under the floorboards. And
Oh,
and for everyone listening, like your reaction, that ooh, that kind of thing of it's a what now, that kind of thing. But it's the placement of where this cat is. It was near the fireplace, the hearth in the main room. There was a few other characteristics in terms of it looked like the cat had been laid there, not had like crawled into the crawl space, if you know what I mean.
mm,
So there's a few characteristics about it that made a few visitors actually question, hey, I think that this might be like the cat is evidence of folklore type magic, which
right.
was passed on with building guilds, that kind of thing. A very English tradition, a very
Mm.
East Anglia in particular tradition over in the UK. And I thought, I'm fascinated by this. And I thought I want to play around a little bit with a ooh sort of element in a little cute romance where I'm going to
Mm.
lock an archaeologist up with a ghost hunting YouTuber.
I'm excited. Love it.
And they've got a dead cat, and this is amazing. And this could be an archaeological breakthrough and a few other things that were found there. And I went down a huge rabbit hole of folklore magic in Australia around archaeological structures. And I
Mm.
know you're shocked because I just said all about owner builder, but it allowed me to get old structures like old barns and stables in Tasmania and all the witch marks and
Hmm.
scorch marks that were on it. Great ABC articles on it too that were out there to cover a big folklore magic sort of project that someone was going around and collecting as many of the photos and of all the marks so that we had a sort of a register evidence of that they existed. And then that, yeah, here's now the birth of Sabrina. And I found myself back at Glengallen after it came out. And I thought we have to get spooky. So one of the places we're going to is for the love experts is the Soul Cauldron out at Ipswich. And that's in the
Oh, that sounds
old
very
flour
spooky.
mill. Yeah, isn't that a great name? So this is
Mm.
a witchy shop. If you need everything from a cauldron to dried herbs, crystals, broomsticks. The broomsticks they have are handmade and just amazing. But they're in the old flour mill, and there's about 7 or 8 businesses in the old flour mill at the top of town on Brisbane Street in Ipswich. And there's a reputed paranormal activity there of a ghost called Hubert. And it's documented really well by Jack Sim. He runs a lot of ghost tours around Ipswich and Brizzy, and he's done a book about haunted Ipswich. But he's claimed that the old flour mill is one of the most haunted places actually in Ipswich.
Okay.
And we had the owners of the Soul Cauldron just saying, "Oh, this is great. You should come and do your witchy book here to
Mm.
launch it because it's haunted here." And we're just looking at it and going, "You're kidding!" Like, and it actually turns out, yeah, we really do need to go. We have a ghost or two in our anthology, and we're really just going to embrace everything we wanted to share about what we love about witchy romance, as well as,
That's so
yeah,
much
everything
fun.
about the Soul Cauldron and that sort
Yep.
of Wiccan, apothecary, spirituality sort of community as well. And it's like, yes, let's just celebrate all of this. And it's really lovely and embracing. And there's a witches market on that day too in
Oh,
Ipswich.
very
So
cool.
hopefully people will wander on down from there and come and visit us at our book launch. So yeah, and who knows, maybe Hubert will come along. I'd like to think, this is the sort of thing where it'd be like a complimentary to him, and he's very well known for some of the things that he used to do and get up to in terms of being sighted around that building. So yeah, it's going to be a really interesting day on the Saturday, 12th of October,
12th of
from
October. I'll have to
3
check my
p.m.
calendar.
Yeah.
I have a very complicated relationship with this paranormal. I'm like, oh my God, do you think there's a ghost? And then I'll be like, oh my God, do you think there's a ghost? I'm like terrified I will actually see one, but unconvinced that they actually exist. So,
Yeah, it's been really fascinating, like talking with Donna Fraser at Glengallen. Because I was asking her about like what are the stories, the myth and lore all around paranormal activity at Glengallen, because it's the type of place that kind of lends itself. It fell into
mm,
disrepair. It's the spooky old house, right? And they even have a gate on their property, right on one of their property boundaries, and it's called Ghost Gate. And there's Ghost Gate Road. And it's
mm,
like, stop, this is just writing itself kind of thing. And then hearing the stories about where that all comes from, and the Ghost Gate is this myth and lore around chap on a horse flying through an open gate that weirdly closed itself after him, and
oh,
yeah, that kind like headless horseman kind of, ugh, but there's no headless horseman, but a guy on a horse, and it's like that. Why did the gate do that? There's literally no one else around, no wind, and completely freaked him out.
I'm
Reports
highly
of a little boy.
suggestible. I'd be very freaked out.
I think, yeah, and in a heightened state too, because yeah, the guy in the story, I don't know why he was galloping. He had to get a message to the homestead, but he was already in that heightened state,
Mm,
and um, all these sort of yeah, unexplainable type of things, unexplainable at least to the witness. And there's this lovely story too of a guest who made a point of getting the attention of the trust employees who run the cafe and the tours and admission. I said, "Oh, our daughter has been talking. She's been saying she's been talking to a little boy, but we couldn't see any little boy." And they just started to talk about some of the things she said. And she was referring to yeah, the little boy was hurt, the little boy lying on a table. And they said, oh, well, there was a little boy who died here in like horse and cart kind of accident. Unfortunately, he was crushed. And they did have him on the dining room table while they were rushing to get
Oh,
doctors and all
wow.
this sort of thing. And this very innocent little girl just was talking about, oh, yeah, I haven't told this little boy. Yeah, he's a little hurt right now, and all this sort of
Oh,
thing.
wow.
And yeah, and the way that Donna relayed this story, it's like, it certainly does make you wonder where, what happened. And yeah, there's some beautiful stories there. And that's the sort of ghost stories I wasn't expecting. So and they've named Myrtle, named the cat Myrtle. So no,
Mm.
Myrtle doesn't even feature in anyone's paranormal activity. Myrtle's just Myrtle.
Yep.
And that's the other funny thing about it is the presence of Myrtle is meant to not necessarily deter ghosts. That's not what cats, or there was other things like leaving pins and tacks, things like that over front doorways, things that you could prick and sort of, it would be owie to
Mm.
use a technical term. For any sort of, the idea was a witch wouldn't go there because she would get pricked, it would draw blood, and it would deter evil things getting in, imps, goblins, that kind of thing. So I think it's kind of lovely that there's a little
Mm.
boy who's surrounded by still so many people, still kids he can
Yes.
play with, that kind
Mm.
of thing. So it didn't actually sound scary, that spooky, that sort of side of what we hear as paranormal
Mm.
activity. It actually just sounded quite lovely. So there was something about the house that didn't feel cold or scary or anything like
Mm.
that. There's something, yeah. It Glengallen just has a lovely warmth to it. And even seeing a mummified cat, that might sound horrific when you're only hearing
Under
this right
normal
right now.
circumstances.
You're right. Like, or it's like, are you sure you're not in ancient Egypt and different location?
Well,
But
I'd be
it's,
totally fine if I went to a museum and saw a mummified cat in that setting where it's an
yep.
Egyptian exhibit. I would not have a problem, but just walking into my kitchen and seeing a mummified cat would be a totally different experience.
And it sounds really odd saying this, but there's nothing. I've been to Glengarry a few times, but it's even the first time I ever saw Myrtle, that first visit. I just sort of stood there thinking, this is kind of fascinating, and there's nothing grotesque about it at all. There's something
Mm.
quite peaceful about it, and also that if this was really some people from that sort of folklore magic tradition of the building guilds, the idea of the superstition and trying to protect the house,
Mm.
that someone went to all that trouble and ritual to make sure the inhabitants were going to be safe.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I just want to do a big clap back to Glengallen Trust, just how well they've actually done the interpretation science. Because I just left feeling, hey, Myrtle's got our back. Like, I feel like this is safe, this feels warm, it doesn't feel cold. So yeah, there's something really like the flip of it all has been the paranormal activity or the folklore and magic around
Mm.
these sorts of encounters that I've had as inspiration for stories. Yeah, it's actually felt just really quite lovely, safe and warm. Yeah.
I have to say, you've really drawn me in to those stories, and I can see your background, and I'm so relieved that your heads in the vase are all smiling romance authors.
They're all, well, my face is on a stick of happy, happy ladies, happy
If you
captives.
happen to have someone walk behind you right now, I would probably jump a mile.
Some sort of errant child who should be in
I'd be
bed,
like,
or
oh my God, there's a ghost.
a husband who's free of bedtime
I'm
stories right
terrible.
now.
I get so, yeah, really into that heightened state, very suggestible. Then I'm terrified.
Now
Yeah.
I do want someone to walk past because to clearly explain, I've got a window behind me, but it's an internal window of old renovations past here. And yeah, I have been known when I've been doing video sort of work, talking to somebody, you just get the kids will suddenly come up against that glass going, "What's mum doing?" So hopefully you're child free this evening from interruption.
My boys' favorite game is a jump scare with mum, so they
Oh my
find it
God.
hilarious to leap out at me. And I, of course, jump a mile because I'm such a nervous wreck all the time anyway. I'm like, one day I'm gonna die. I'm literally gonna drop down dead. And they're just laughing. Got to be a source of entertainment somehow to your children. Oh.
Look, it's only safe and warm here, I promise you this. I only bring love to the conversation of paranormal activity and magic for that matter. Yes.
Well, we have chatted like we're just on the phone. Sorry, listeners. We
Good.
forgot you were listening.
I'm not sorry at all. I'm not apologizing.
No, these conversations, like I do like having podcasts that feel warm and friendly and people get a better insight of who we are as well. So it is good to have a chat like you're chatting with an old friend, which you are anyway, luckily for me. A
This has
young
been
friend,
lovely. Thank you
not an
so
old friend.
much. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for, I don't know, being seduced by my wily charms and
Yes, I'm
slotting
like
me in.
hanging on every word, going, oh, I want to hear more about the ghosts and the cat and the when can I go and visit and check it out? Although I
And look,
actually believe I'm closed off to anything paranormal or psychic. I don't have any premonitions or get any weird feelings or but I don't want to tempt the universe either by
yep, that's
saying,
very
come
true.
on, show
Yeah.
me you're real. I'm like, no, I never want to see a ghost. I never want a creepy feeling. I'm happy just living my oblivious life.
And I just realized I should do promo at my end.
Mhm.
If you can't make it to Soul Cauldron to the Old Flour Mill for our book launch in Ipswich, we are also at Shelf Lovers at Wooloowin.
Yes, I'll
At
be there.
Yes, you are. So come see Guy. Come. This is a late time of night now.
Uh,
Come see Kai.
we're
Come see
tired.
Louisa/Sabrina, whatever I am on the
Yes,
night. But we're at Shelf Lovers on Sunday, the 20th of October.
I'll
And we've
look to
got
that.
book cake. That's a very
Hey.
compelling argument. So if you'd like to eat book cake, we're going to be in conversation with a few of the authors as well, and one of whom she believes she lives in a haunted house, and
Oh,
we'll be in conversation with Mel Pickering. She writes gothic romance, as well as H.M. Hodson. She's an award-winning romance author who does witchy romance that's on the darker side of witchy romance, which is really good. And we'll have others in attendance there as well, and also the day before. So if you are Bayside, if you are around Wynnum, many of us who are in the Love Hexperts will be there with the Love Hexperts, and we'll have special editions too, I believe, the pretty foil, sparkly versions of
oh,
our book.
I'll be
We're going to
zipping all
be
over the city.
zip, 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 yes. We're going to be at the Romance Book Fair, and that's being hosted by Wynnum Library, Brisbane City Council,
Mhm.
their Writers in Residence program, and it's 11 till 3 p.m. that day. And it's going to be panels of authors. If you like romance, it is represented on the program, and I'll be leading a panel of contemporary romance authors at the end of the day, but we'll all be there with our wares
I
for
might
from
pop all
11
the
o'clock on.
links into the show notes so people can
Yeah,
find the
done. I'll send
events.
you
Yeah,
deets. Yep.
yeah,
So
amazing.
hopefully we'll see you guys somewhere. That'd be great.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate your time. I've loved hearing all about your anthologies. And now that you are I'm going to change it to the queen of pen names.
The queen bee of pen
Yes,
names.
yes,
Oh,
um,
Beyonce.
yes. Okay, have a
I'll
great
take it.
weekend. Thank you so much.
You too. Thank you so much for having me on Totally Lit.
You're welcome.
Totally Lit is an independent podcast. You can help support us to continue to chat with wonderful Australian creatives by leaving a review on iTunes or sharing our socials with your friends. You can also make a contribution at www.buymeacoffee.com/totallylit. For those of you who know me, I'm kind of a caffeine addict, so you can keep me fueled with caffeine, and this will also help with equipment and podcasting platform fees. I love to interact with our listeners, so feel free to say hello either by email or social media. You can email me at totallylitpodcast@gmail.com, or you can check out the Totally Lit Writing Community Facebook group. It's a space to continue the conversation and share your writing successes, events, launches, and latest projects. Jump into the group and say hello. Thank you for listening to Totally Lit, and don't forget to go out into the world to read, write, create, ignite.